Okay,
Nice
so
little Zoom voice.
Yvonne, over to you.
Cool. All right. So I am going to chat about migrating workflows and process builders to Flow, which is a riveting process, let me tell you. Um, so I'm aware that probably a lot of people might have been doing this already. There's also an awful lot of people that haven't been doing this, knowing that it's coming and just sort of at some point going, I have to do this. I know I have to do this, and just not quite getting there with it. I have been doing this for a little while now, just kind of working through various orgs. And I think because I've worked through kind of like various orgs now, I kind of have like almost like a bit of a process. So this process might work for you, it might not work for you. See how it goes, I guess. It's not you must do this. It's this is how I do it. Feel free to take tips or not. All right. Where does one start? So sometimes you've got all this stuff and you're trying to figure out like actually like there's a pile of things in there that I don't really want to have to deal with. Where is the starting point? Uh, Come on, little clicker. There we go. Anybody who's singing along to the sound of this, it'll be showing their age right now. So there's various schools of thought here. And I have listened to talks where I listened to a consultant who basically said that the start of the process really should be reassessing your your process, your business processes. So rather than moving with the let's let's take our automations and migrate them, she was suggesting that we started way beyond that and effectively started revisiting the business processes from scratch and then working out how we move forwards, effectively re-architecting the system whilst we're moving the workflows to flows. Now, that's lovely. And I think that that's a fantastic way to do things if you have the time, if you have the bandwidth for the team, if you have the bandwidth as an admin, all those things. However, we all know that re-architecting all of your business processes to move from flows to flows is unlikely, let's be honest. So for me, a very good place to start is actually looking at the existing automations and figuring out how we push those forwards. So, first things first, assess what's already in there. And if you've not looked at your workflow rules for a while, or you've not looked at your process builders for a while, because let's face it, who does? They just exist in the background and we all kind of look at our flows. It might take you a little bit of a moment to just go back through them and figure out what's actually in there. So let's look at what's active. Um, Obviously, when you go into your list view, you can see things that are in there that are active and deactivated. Immediately, anything that's already deactivated, sack it off. Don't even think about it. What object is it sitting on? And again, you can have a little think there about like, have we got 57 workflow rules all sitting on opportunity, for example? Do we have a workflow rule that is working on an object that actually nobody has touched for the last 4 years and we're not entirely sure what it does? So yeah, assess which object you're looking at. When does it trigger? So when is it created? Or is it created and edited? Or does it work on every time or only when it's updated? So have a look at like actually when it triggers. And then equally, what are the entry criteria? Um, so if you'll start to kind of see things that look the same to go, oh, this triggers when this happens. So this also triggers when this happens. This also triggers when this happens. You can kind of start to see a bit of a pattern there. And then I would also assess what are the outcomes. So is it updating a field? Is it sending an email? Is it sending an email internally? Is it sending an email externally? So just make a quick note of actually what is that workflow rule or process builder doing. Um, and then on the back of those things, give it a risk level. And your risk level is entirely up to you. Personally, I tend to assess things that are if it's an internal field update that doesn't trigger off another 75 million automations in the background, that is low risk. That is something that we can update that is only going to have an impact internally for some users and we can monitor it. The things that are triggering something that triggers 75 other million other things, those are high risk. Internal emails for me are medium risk because worst that happens, we send out the wrong email to an internal colleague. Sending emails externally, they're high risk. So give it a risk level to just kind of just let you assess actually what can I poke at and be comfortable with? What am I just going to have to give a little bit more thought to just to make sure this is working properly? So we take some initial notes. Now I've put together this a template that looks like this. So I love a spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet works for me because it allows me to pull all the things together. So this is actually an active one that I did for a client a little while ago. And there's nothing in here that's particularly that tells you who the client is, or it's not, or it doesn't specify. But I have taken off the first two columns here, which would be rule name and description. So again, you can start to see here that we can take the object, we take the process type, the outcomes, all the things that I've just mentioned, and just pop them in a spreadsheet. And then you can start to put in some initial notes. So you can see across here where I've got this one, the outcome, there was none. There was no workflow actions have been created. So the workflow was sat there, not doing anything. And I've not been doing anything since 2022, and that was really helpful. So immediately this could be deactivated. It's not doing anything. Um, and then again, immediately we had an internal email alert, which felt a bit random. You know, it was for a specific campaign that ran last year. Actually, do we still need this? So document it all out. And sometimes you can have a really long list of things, and sometimes this can be a really short list of things, depending on obviously what your org looks like. But it allows you to at least put it all in the same place. So you're not jumping between screens, and then you can start to pull things together. Speaking of which, is it still needed? So let's just hit stop, especially if you get, this is especially valuable if you don't necessarily have the opportunity to, I guess, work with all the teams to reevaluate all of your processes. So if your idea is to just to go in and go, oh, do you know what? I'll just move everything and it'll be fine. Then maybe just have a moment and just reevaluate actually whether that automation is still wanted or useful. Um, I recently had a conversation with a client who honestly, the workflows were like pinging emails all over the place. And actually, when I spoke to the admin, um, her feedback was that she was like, "Oh yeah, no, nobody actually reads those. So yeah, no, we don't really want them." Okay, great. So we've got something that's been in place since 2022, and people have been receiving an email, but nobody actually wants it. Let's sack that off, or let's like restrict it, or let's make it something else. So yeah, so just because it's an active workflow or process builder does not mean that it is useful or wanted or should be converted into a flow. So just always keep that in mind. And sometimes you can work with your business or your front end operations to figure out what that looks like, and sometimes you can't. And sometimes, like I said, you can really just you can make some executive decisions like this ain't been doing anything for 3 years. It's not getting turned into a flow full stop. So now that we've got all of our workflow rules and process builders on the same page, we can start to match things up. So it's worth noting that not every workflow rule or process builder will turn into its own flow version. So by this, I mean that if you've got 15 workflow rules and two process builders, you're not going to end up with 17 flows at the end. That might not happen. It might happen. There's a high chance it won't happen. Group things by object. So going back to your spreadsheet, you can filter it and go, right, okay, what have I got on opportunity that needs to sit all together? What have we got on contact? What have we got on, whatever your objects might be? And start to group them out by specific objects. And then you can start to group them by trigger. So do all of these things operate on create only, or do they operate on create and edit? So already you can see that if you've got 5 workflow rules that are sitting on opportunity on create only, that's probably a singular flow right there. Like you can start to feel what that looks like. You can start to group them by entry criteria. So if you've got five, so out of those five workflow rules sitting on opportunity that are on create, do three of those trigger when the case is closed one? Great. Now we've started to narrow it down a little bit more. And also group it by time delay. So the one of the one of the factors that I found with one particular org actually was they had lots of workflow rules firing at different times. So they would have immediate workflow rules. They would have workflow rules that set off an hour after the update. They would have workflow rules that set off 3 hours after the update. And then we'd have workflow rules that set off 10 hours after the update. Um, so I appreciate not everybody will have those weird and wonderful complexities, but if you've got things where they're grouped by time, then in your workflows and your process builders, then you can kind of start to have a look at those as well and see, well, actually, why is this firing an hour from now? What are we expecting it to do? And does it still need to? Why is this going 3 hours versus 1 hour? Um, and it might very well be that actually that was how they managed the delay in the processes. So forcing this one to trigger first, then this one, then this one. And you can have a review of what that actually looks like. So start to group your things together. And then you can then say, well, actually, now we've got multiple things that we could probably put together in the same flow. Great. However, don't forget about the existing flows. So remember to keep one eye on your existing stuff that's already there. So going back to you've got your five, can't remember what I said now. You've got your your five workflow rules and two process builders that are sitting on that are sitting on opportunity, but then you've also already got four flows that are also sitting on opportunity. Well, actually, can some of these be incorporated into that existing flow? Like, have we got a before save flow, or have we got an after save flow that triggers on something very similar? And can we just slot that in there and add it in? Um, So I'm not necessarily saying that you need to do a complete overhaul of all of your automations, and you need to start consolidating them down into smaller and smaller packages. But what I will say is, if there's an opportunity to only do one update versus four individual flow updates, where effectively you're kind of going down the same route, that is going to be better for your org, and it's going to be easier for you to maintain in the long run because you're not having to look in different places to figure out what's happening when stuff triggers. Um, is there a flow already doing the same thing? This sounds really obvious. Like, why would you have a flow that's already doing the same thing as a workflow rule? Because surely somebody that set up the flow would have cancelled the workflow rule. Nuh-uh, nuh-uh. Like this happens. So go and check out if you've already got flow that's doing the same thing as the workflow rule, and then you kind of have to switch one off to see is it actually doing the same thing or is it doing something slightly different? Keep an eye out for that weird and wonderful stuff that you find. And then in which order does the workflow ruler process builder that you want to migrate work with the existing flow automation? So if you chuck a new flow in, or two new flows, or three new flows on that same object, actually, is that messing with the schedule of your existing flows? So make use of that flow trigger explorer to understand how things shuffle up and down the list, to be able to know what's firing in which order. And especially if that's important, um, in terms of has something been set on a time delay to force it to go then in a workflow rule, but it can fire immediately in a flow if it sits after this other thing and after this other thing. So yeah, so keep an eye on that flow trigger explorer and remember that you can move things around to make them fire in the order that works best for your org. Okay, I'm going to open up to questions at the end. So hopefully somebody will have nice, easy questions for me, but bear with me. All right, so then we put it all together and test. So I was trying to think about my top tips and actually what might my top tips look like for this process. And again, these are my top tips. Other people might have other things. And if you've been through this, then you might come away with something else. And please share those at the end. But these are kind of things that work for me. And number one is not even a top tip. It is just don't do it. Don't build and prod. If you're gonna migrate stuff, migrate in a sandbox, migrate in a dev box, migrate in a partial box, migrate in a full copy box, whatever. Test it and migrate it and sort it out in a sandbox. Don't do it in prod. I'm really hoping everybody already knows that. Um, do the low-hanging fruit first. So these are all the ones that fell into the low risk category. So those little field updates, those internal emails, those ones that are just like a straight, like a really obvious, yeah, that's a nice easy fix. I can just slot that into that existing flow, or there's nothing that I can put it in, but I'll just create a new one. Do the easy ones that you're comfortable with first, so you ease yourself in, especially if flow building is not where you love to exist. And then you work up. Genuinely, you find that once you've done a couple of nice low-hanging ones, you're like, okay, all right, I get this. It tested, it's fine. And you can work up and you can move into the next one and not feel quite so vomity about it. Um, it's difficult to redesign a whole business process. So even if you start looking at this and you've got multiple automations that do different things, and you know that it's not a great process, and you know that you've heard wind of the business or the organization moving stuff at some point, but nobody really knows where, what it looks like, and nobody really knows actually where we're at with that. Sometimes you just have to know that you're migrating an existing process for now that's going to change later. And I guess this is it can't it can't be perfect all the time, or it can't be perfect at the start all the time. Yes, ideally, when you're redesigning and you're migrating, you want to make sure that your new business process is sound and it's solid and it's going to be in. Sometimes, can't believe this has been recorded. Sometimes you just gotta move stuff that you know isn't great, but you've got an eye on it to change it later. And don't feel bad about that because that's just how life works sometimes. Swap out external email alerts for email actions. Your future admin self will thank you for this. So wherever you are migrating an email alert, swap it out for an email action. If you've never put an email action in a flow, go and learn how to put an email action in. Yeah, I waffle on about this an awful lot actually. And I love this is because it stamps your email onto the record that it came from. So it stamps your email onto the related ID without you then so you can immediately see what was sent. So anybody else accessing can see what was sent. That's all levels of faff when you put an email alert in. So whilst you're doing this, yes, it takes a little bit longer, but swap out your external email alerts for email actions. Your future self will thank you, I promise. And my last top tip, because I know this is going to be a question, is yes, you can use the migration tool. The migration tool has been all levels of controversial, but don't rely on the migration tool. And the reason that I say don't rely on it is because if we go back to I want to take this workflow rule, but I want to squeeze it into that flow that already exists. Or I want to take these 5 workflow rules and I want to put them into one flow. Migration tool doesn't do that. It can't help you with that. What it can help you with is if you've got an especially large process builder that you want to try and just get to grips with, migrate that. And then you can start to move it around and play with it and actually, I don't need this bit, I'll take this out. Actually, this is weird, like I'll swap that out. So sometimes you can get inspiration from your migration tool, but don't rely on your migration tool. And like I said, not every workflow rule or process builder will become its own flow. Yeah, it won't. So and the migration tool will do that. If you use your migration tool as gospel, it will just migrate like for like on every single thing. It also then won't, also gives you really weird headers. So always go back in if you have migrated something and change the headers so that, again, your future admin self or whoever else is looking at that will thank you for that because it's just odd. So, take out the random headers that it puts in and give it nice new names that make sense to you and your organization. So it's somebody else that comes back and can look at it and go, oh, this is a decision tree. I understand what this is doing here. Okay, so we've put it all together and then we test. And then we test again. And then we test again. And then we get some other people to test again. Like I cannot emphasize how much we test. And then we deploy it because we didn't build it in prod. And then we test it again. And then we all have a moment of going, phew, it worked and nothing broke and none of the users noticed. And then you start again with your next one. Questions.
I have a
Emma has a hand up.
comment. I have a comment and then a question. So the other thing which just kind of dawned on me while Yvonne was talking about that was Yvonne mentioned about email alerts and changing them to email actions. And probably while you're there, it's probably a good idea to check through flows that you historically built that you used email alerts for. Because at one point, the email actions were not great and had quite a bit of functionality missing. So you carried on kind of just telling it to fire an email alert. So yeah, so that's just something to just consider while you're in this process. You obviously don't have to do them straight away, but might be worth for consistency. Then my other question, Yvonne, because you made a very good point about building everything in a sandbox, which obviously Yvonne is correct. But I do have a question, is how would you handle something that was triggering on the back of, say, an integration, but I just don't have that integration in my sandbox? So I want to be sure it's definitely going to work with the integration. How would you tackle that?
Um, Personally, I would probably still build it in a sandbox and I would do as many steps as I could to replicate the triggering of that automation. Now, I've also, and I have been through this and I've bought this t-shirt where I've built something in a sandbox and it does things exactly as you would expect it to do. And then you move it into prod and then you test it with a manual trigger and it does exactly what you expect it to do. And then you set it live in the integration and it doesn't work. And you don't know why. Because
Mm.
there's something weird that's happening that you haven't quite accounted for. So I would still say yes, absolutely. Start it in a sandbox, figure it out, do as much as you possibly can, trying to replicate the impact of that integration on your brand new piece of automation. Um, Move it into production and then set it live. But then also, like for me, that would be a high risk one. So this is one of these ones that I would set live and watch like a hawk. So I would, if I can, I would put through some test automation stuff. Um, so if it's a donation, I'll put through a test donation, or whatever that might be. If it's a sign up form, I'll put through a test sign up form, and try and force it to do something before anybody else notices.
Awesome. Thank you. Debbie, you've got a
Uh,
question.
Hi everyone. Yeah,
Hi.
not exactly a question, just a bit of information for those who've not moved to nonprofit cloud yet, because it's about the industries. We actually have access to data processing engine.
Mm.
So for some of the scheduled workflows or things that you might be migrating, sometimes even record triggered flows that actually the data doesn't need to be updated immediately. You do have the option to use data processing engine once you learn how to use it, because it's not as easy as I thought it would be. But anyway, yeah, so just for people to know that if you move over to nonprofit clouds, you do have the option to do that. And I've found it to be very powerful for doing summary information instead of having to use like record triggered flows to kind of update figures. I can run it through the night and and it updates everything really well. So yeah, just for people to know that that's available.
Noted. Good shout. I have been playing with the data processing engine in Nonprofit Cloud, and it's breaking my head. So, but good to know
Yeah,
that it
I've
can.
got it working, but only in simple things. I've had to look at like, donor summary data processing engine. I look and I just I don't know how this works. It's some kind of magic, and I just left it. It was too complicated, but it is very
So,
powerful, and it's definitely worth learning. I think for as we gradually start to move over to nonprofit cloud, it is a brilliant tool that's really going to help all of us, I think.
yeah, once it stops breaking my head. Good point, Debbie. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And the other thing I'd just add on that, just the opposite side of that is I know that some consultants, when they're putting nonprofit cloud in, is for very basic use cases. They're actually using things like DLRS to continue to do roll-ups rather than data processing engine, just because data processing engine is so powerful, can do all this fantastic stuff, but you've got to have somebody who understands how it works. So there's a little bit of a, if you're trying to do something quite simple and it's just a one-off thing, like, a quick roll up, it's kind of, I keep hearing nonprofit cloud being talked of as like a buffet that you can select your stuff off. So there is also that level of like, well, there are alternatives, which is nice. But yes, data processing engine does look pretty cool. Okay, Lauren.
Hi, kind of a two-part question. So the org that I'm working on runs on NPSP. The good news is we ourselves have programmed very few automations in our database. We're very much not putting Salesforce to the limits of its abilities. However, when I started this process, I was like, oh, we've only programmed like 3 or 4 of these. This won't take long at all. And then I realized there's a whole lot of automation that's out of the box NPSP stuff. I'm going to go ahead and assume that we need to migrate that too, that Salesforce.
So
Hmm?
you can
I
leave
knew this
those for
question was going to
now.
come.
Yeah. Okay, so the answer on that
This is
is
an Emma question.
You can leave them for now. Like,
Okay.
don't stress, like, they're not going to just stop working, even when, they're end of support, they're not end of life. And there's people who I know in the community who used to work in the engineering team on the MPSP product, and they're like,
Mhm.
we never had problems because of our workflows. However, there is also an open source commons community sprint group, which Debbie's going to talk about those people in a minute, not literally these exact ones, but the group, and they are currently building and aiming to package those up. So once we get an answer on that, hopefully what you'll be able to do is just I'm going to use the word deploy, but basically install them is the word I'm looking for.
Mhm.
Install them into your org and know that they already literally replace what you had before. So what I would say for now is just hang tight. You don't need to do them yourself unless you really want to. So I know a few consultants where they've had clients who've been really insistent.
Mhm.
More, I would say, bigger non-profits, maybe where they've got like whole security teams and IT teams who are like, this is going end of life. We can't have anything end of life. It's in our terms and conditions that we don't have anything end of life. Like literally, I would say medium, smaller, don't worry. And yes, Kathy said they were working on them at the September sprint. I also got a ping yesterday on, I'd been nosying in their group and got let in to their Slack channel. So I keep getting updates and I know they're really trying to get them pushed through. So the short
Mhm.
version, don't, they'll come and we will make sure we tell you when they come.
Okay, fab. In which case, that makes my second question irrelevant. So
Ah,
that's me
amazing.
done. Love
Fab.
that.
Love that. Okay.
Cheers.
Not a problem. Anybody else got any questions?
No, good. Done.
Okay. I'm going to do just one more thing. Is there anybody here who's done a lot of workflow process builder migration to flows and has any thoughts, comments, questions, concerns? Wants to add to anything Yvonne said? No.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right,
So,
Kathy.
Rosie
I
kindly
agree
popped
with not
the.
using the
Oh,
migration tool because the first time I did it, it came up with such weird names that I basically ended up having to rebuild the whole thing anyways. At least for process builders. I haven't actually tried it for workflow rules, but again, you can usually with workflow rules combine several of them into a single flow. And I
I was just going to say,
apologize for the deep voice, but I'm still waking up.
Rosie popped the document that I had, the general assessment document, into the chat. So if anybody wants to use that, it's got one example kind of in there, which is a really bizarre one, actually. And you would have thought that Salesforce would update the task close date with the date that it's actually completed already, but it doesn't. So somebody had that as a workflow rule. So that's in there if anybody wants to also have a look at that.
Okay. Well, Yvonne will be at Coffee Chat on Thursday anyway. So if you suddenly have a question, feel free, or bring them on to Ask Me Anything in a couple of weeks. Big thank you to Yvonne. Thank you for sharing some insights. I hope people found that helpful and it's given you all inspiration to go and move your workflows and process builders to flow. Woohoo! Okay. So I'm now going to hand over to Debbie. Debbie is going to talk about the Commons. So, Debbie,
Hello, right.
over to you.
Share my screen. I'm hoping I can do this right. I usually do the whole screen. I'm going to see, does this work for just seeing my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. And hopefully it's put all your pictures. So I thought it might be helpful to look through and learn a bit more about what the Commons have built, what's available out there at the moment, and what projects are in process. Because sort of several of us, we've got sort of similar problems. And instead of having to build something ourselves, there are free tools out there, and it's just being aware of them, like apps on the App Exchange. And there's a couple that are apps, but not yet on the App Exchange, but you can still get to them, I believe. So the Commons, for anybody who doesn't know, is a kind of a voluntary sprints that we do, and it's about building tools for nonprofits. And they're all open source, so once you get them, you can tweak them and change them to fit your needs. There are regular sprints where things can be updated or new products developed, new systems. And it's an international thing. So there's sort of groups from all over, sprints happening all over the world at different times. I'll go into that a bit more later. So I don't know how many of you have ever taken part in a sprint, but it's something you can join in as well as benefiting from. So it works both ways. There is a community group, so you can go in on the Trailblazer community, you can join this group and then keep up to date. When there's another sprint, they'll tell you all about it. When some of the products are released, you'll get informed, that kind of thing. So and there's also the new LinkedIn. I don't know if people have seen the new Commons. Is it Commons or is it just the non-profit? Can't remember what it's called now, but they've
I think it's
they brought
non-profit overall. What they've tried to do is fill the space that the non-profit hub used to have. There used to be like a whole separate community site basically, and they've tried to kind of do that. I will find the link for that group and I will put it in.
Thanks. Yeah, that's worth joining as well, because they, as well as broadcasting here, it also they're starting to do that on that group as well. It's also a great opportunity. You see lots of sort of people getting a chance to get involved. Well, I'll go into that a bit later. Perhaps we'll just look at the products first, then I'll talk more about the actual Commons and sprints. So one of the, I don't know if this is the most used, it feels like it should be because it's mentioned a lot, is declarative lookup rollup summaries. Some of you may already have this in your orgs. I know I do. And it's affectionately known as Dolores. And this one is, there are limits on your rollups. Even with an MPSP, and you can only do rollups on standard Salesforce on master detail, whereas this allows you to do it on lookups. And you've got a lot more control over what you want to see. So, for example, with our organization, we have households with MPSP, and we have families in those households, and we want to know the ages of the people who have Down syndrome in the household, so we can target and say, anybody with early years kids, under 5, or anybody with children up to 16, or young adults or whatever. And so I've got this working so that I've got the minimum age and maximum age on the household, so that we can filter that when we're sending communications and things. And that's something I couldn't see any other way to do with a free tool. So there's no limit on this one too. I think is it Passage Technology? They would do an equivalent to this, but you could only get 3 free roll-ups, and you'd have to pay for more. So what's lovely about this one is there's no limit. And what you've got on their site, I close them down as I go through them, and I know I'm on the next one. They've got a cookbook with recipes, so if you kind of thinking, is this going to be any good for me? Is there any way you can use it? You could have a look through the cookbook and get some ideas and think, oh, well, actually, that's quite a valuable stat for the way we use things. It also has the installation guide and how to set it up. So that's really quite helpful. Summit events. This is one I keep meaning to look at, haven't got round to yet. So I don't know if anybody else uses that. I ought to keep an eye on chat, shouldn't I, in case someone does. But feel free to go off mute and say we do if you do. I don't know, Emma, have you used it with any clients?
So I really like summit events, but I have one challenge which I'm trying to, let's say, overcome. So summit events, you've got in here, it takes payments, but actually it has functionality available that it will be able to take payments. But the more I've dug, the more I've understood that it doesn't take payments out the box.
Right.
You actually have to do the whole setup of Slack connectors and that. No, let's try again. Stripe connectors and things like that. Now, my understanding is there's some challenge with Salesforce locking you into certain products or things that have a cost to them.
Right.
So one of the things I've been trying to find out a bit more about is like, is this something that is actually available, but we just can't like push out, or I don't know. I don't know. It's a bit of a difficult one, because I'm like, if you need a developer to do that, also how complicated is it? So it is something that I have been meaning to look into, but kind of every time I get far enough into that conversation, then something else comes up and I never quite get there. But I mean, it's I know that the Commons themselves use it, for example, for their sign-up forms for the Commons events, and it's great. And it's great if so if you need like a free events app or free events, fantastic. It's just that payment bit. But equally, what I'm trying to find out is what level of effort does it take? Because if it's only a small amount of, say, developer time, it may be worth it. So I will keep the group posted once I find out more.
Yeah, because that's part of ours. We've got lots of free events, and I'm using Form Assembly for bookings at the moment. And yeah, it'd be great if we could find an app that doesn't, use your charity thing. Find something that's free instead of having to pay for it. So that's something if you run events, and again, like Emma's recommending, free. But yeah, good to know if anybody does start using it for payments if we don't get around to finding out. Then there's the lovely Salesforce indicators. Again, it's one I know I have. And I don't know how many others have installed it. I think, but did you do a session with it, Emma? I think a while ago, or
yeah, and I was on the Salesforce indicators team for a while. Yeah,
because I know lots of us installed it after we did a session on it.
Yeah, Jodie came and did a presentation on it. And
Mm.
it's a great app. They're definitely well into their hundreds.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're at now. I think Rosie at 10YO uses it. Pretty sure at least I installed it when I was working with them, but Rosie can tell us if they're still using it.
Yeah, we use it. We like it.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got it as well. We just use it on contact at the moment, just to give a nice quick view of things about the person. So if they're deceased, if they're a member, lots of sort of, if they've got gift aid, I've got lots of little icons so someone see it at a glance without having to scroll all the way down their contact record to find out information. And it's stuff that, wouldn't necessarily fit up in a summary. And again, with a lot of these, there are what they call, there's recipes here, there's a cookbook in one of them, and it gives you ideas of setting things up. So if you're interested in looking at it and not quite sure would it be useful, you can have a look and get some ideas and say, well, there's possibly a use case already set up, and then you've got a nice little step by step of how you can set it up as well, so you haven't got to work it out for yourself on how to set it up. So I know this one, is it this one uses custom metadata to do what it does? I know that the Dolores does the declarative roll-up summary. So if you've ever thought about custom metadata and never quite got your head around it, that's a nice way in as well. You can kind of see how this works and then maybe work out how it could work for you in a different way.
Yeah, it does use custom metadata. And what I find is initially it can be a little bit challenging just to get your head around how it initially works. But I think once you've got your head around kind of how it works, then you can work out how to do the rest. What I would say is anybody looking to use it is use it for a very like a simple use case to start with. Like don't go don't go crazy with your use case, right? Because I think I found that some people try and start with something quite complicated and then they're like, oh, it's too hard. And I'm like, well, it's because you've gone for something quite difficult. Try and do something that's relatively straightforward based on quite simple on a record and get your head around that and then go from there.
I know.
And then I think
It's just because I know I found with one of them, I was trying to put an icon on and then realized I was working to the wrong level. So you have to sort of get used to at what level you see what differences, isn't it?
Rich has got a question.
Hi. I'm interested in difference between indicators and conditional formatting, because obviously this was developed before we had the joys of conditional formatting. Where would I use one and not the other?
Conditional formatting is not as flexible, doesn't give you as many options. I'm also going to look at Yvonne because I know Yvonne has compared this for a couple of clients.
Yeah, so conditional formatting is like the starter pack, I suppose, of indicators. So it works in very specific circumstances and it gives you 5 colors and like probably about the same amount of icons, maybe about 20 icons. Indicators gives you a wealth of all the things and a wealth of all the icons, and you can custom your icons and all sorts. It also allows you to be a lot more complex in your criteria. So yeah, so I know that where we've used conditional formatting, it has been quite limited insofar as that you can only really use it for very, very specific things. I suppose conditional formatting also goes in a field, generally kind of like in a header bar, I suppose, whereas icons will can go in different areas on your page. So conditional formatting is very much linked to fields, and it has to be next to the field, whereas you can group all of your indicators all together.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yvonne.
So another project that's out there is the grants content kit. This one I've not actually seen, but and I'm not sure how Americanized it is, but that could be one worth looking at to help with saving time in sort of creating your grants.
And I don't know the answer of that either. And one of the reasons I don't is because this project literally has come along so quickly. They
Yeah,
just really got on with it, got it done. So yeah, so anybody who fancies taking a look, having a play with that and seeing where they can go with it, we'd love some feedback. So you say, I don't know how, if it's very
definitely.
American or not, but yeah, I'd love to hear more.
Yep. And then this one's very specific, the affordable housing program. That one started last year, didn't it, I think? And there are very dedicated sprints just specifically for this one, rather than a lot of the time the sprints are covering lots of projects. So if you're in that market, there could be some useful tools. Some that are in progress is the membership essentials. That's one I'm on the team of, and we've been going for quite a long time, and we're kind of, at the 80% there, and that seems to take the longest time. And I know Kathy's working with us as well, and we meet monthly, and we're gradually moving it along to sort of try and get out the minimum viable product, as it were. So hopefully not too much longer before that's available. And then they're working on AI prompt recipes. So I don't know if anybody's actually able to afford using things like Agentforce. I'm assuming that's what the AI prompts is for use with.
No, not necessarily. I think originally the
No?
AI prompts was born actually out of any AI tool. So it really was talking about what's the best way to create usable, reusable prompts. So kind of what's the best
Cool.
way to stick something into, say, ChatGPT and get it to kick you something out that's helpful. The one thing I don't know though about this project is I don't know where they're all stored. I feel
No.
like that's a question that could be potentially asked. I might even ask Corey. I'm going to make a note. I know Corey's traveling this week, but Corey leaves the Commons from Salesforce. I'll make a note and actually ask where the AI prompt recipes are.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the point of that. I am actually going to drop something in now, if that's okay, Debbie.
Yes, of course. Please do.
So I have heard that there is due to be an actual Agentforce sprint in California, in San Francisco,
In San Francisco, December.
in December.
Yep. It's actually on the Commons page.
There you go. So I don't really know what to make of that, to be honest. I think there's a lot of people who are quite excited, but there's also a level of my understanding, and from what somebody came to me and said to me only a couple of weeks ago was, I thought that we could only create things that didn't have cost. Now,
Yeah.
funnily enough, Grassroots Mobile, which I don't know if it's still readily available, but Grassroots Mobile actually did have a cost. But I think the cost saving was so big that it was decided that was okay. So I don't really know. So what I'm going to say around that is like, let's watch this space. But I know that the AI prompts recipes group was not linked to that. And I will try and find out a bit more about that and where they're saved, because I only sat in an AI session at Northeast Streaming, wasn't specific for nonprofits, but some really interesting stuff about helping get the most out of any sort of like AI, tool like ChatGPT, and kind of keeping it on track and getting it to give you stuff that you might want and how that works. So yeah, so I'll try and find out a bit about that for you.
Thank you. Yeah, as you can tell, I've got no links on this one either, so I couldn't find a lot about it. I just am aware it is out there. The Technical Collective is a group that's set up, which is sort of a bit more than a project, really. Let me have a look. Oops, that was the membership information. There you go. So they're a group of people who got together, and it's sort of they can help with projects. So you might be able to get some support if you need help with projects, as well as volunteer your expertise to get involved. Is that right?
That is correct. And
My
I know that
understanding, yeah.
this is one of the things that is happening at the London non-profit group. I said earlier I couldn't remember what was on their agenda. I know
Yeah.
on that there is meant to be feedback on 3 people who've taken part in that. I don't know a huge amount about what they're sharing, but they're meant to be talking about that. But Sylvia is running the technical collective and is doing a great job pulling that together. So kind of linking kind of a team of Salesforce professionals with more junior people and helping those junior people find their route in with that right level of support and so on. So yeah, definitely worth taking a good look at the Technical Collective site here if you're interested in that, if you'd like to get involved, if you'd like to see if they have people who they want to put into organizations. What I would say is absolutely actively being worked on. So Sylvia is actively working on this with members of the team, not just at sprints, it's being worked on. So it's quite an exciting group.
Definitely. So you can either get involved or benefit from what they're doing.
Absolutely. And it's obvious, and it doesn't say the UK Technical Collective, but I know that they are focused on the UK at the moment. Absolutely focused on that.
Yeah. So then there was a few other projects. There's the non-profit how-to video series. So I know I've done a couple where they're videoing how to use things and then publishing. So like some of it, one of the trailheads, when they did the little mini videos and the voiceovers, there's some of that as well that they've done.
Yeah, that's they've gone a little bit quiet, and I can tell you a bit more about that because I was part of that team and I've led sprints for that team, and I've actually gone back to that team. So the non-profit how-to video series was originally all built on videos for MPSP. And when Non-Profit Cloud got announced, there was a decision made by one of the leaders in that group, who was really the main project manager, that now was the time for them to step out. And there have been a huge amount of discussions around, well, what do we do next? Primarily, I mean, for one point, their MPSP videos went with documentation, and there wasn't documentation for MPC readily available. So they couldn't, even if they wanted to, do videos to go with it. So that was an interesting one. And then there also were decisions made that really non-profit cloud comes at a higher price point, and therefore shouldn't Salesforce really be supporting all of that, rather than relying on the community to put together all those videos with their documentation, etc., etc., etc. There also is the MPC best practices group. So there's kind of a, well, non-profit cloud best practices group have a group, they could do their own videos, and maybe there can be some stuff done by how-to videos to support that. So what the how-to video series is doing at the moment is they are working kind of on 2 things. They're working on videos potentially for free products, so things like unofficial SF components. So they're starting to look at that. And then the other thing they are working on is videos for products that already exist in the Commons. So Bill, who is our video guru, Bill Florio, is starting videos for Dolores first. So DLRS is going to get some kind of promotional videos to try and get that more heavily engaged with, and then we're going to work with other Commons teams to do more videos. But what I would say is, for anybody who is on MPSP and doesn't know how a certain, wants to learn how a piece of functionality works, you can often find these videos embedded in the Salesforce documentation, but you can also do exactly what Debbie's done, look up even if you Google like non-profit Salesforce how-to series, find the channel, and then from there, put in what you're looking for. And there are so many videos in here. I also even find them useful if you're trying to explain what a piece of functionality does to a team member, because it might be that somebody's like, oh, I don't just, I want to know if we could use, I don't know, I need a functionality for this. And you're like, well, engagement plans would be great. Why don't you take a look at this video? So they're normally short videos, and they kind of go into the very basic how to do it. So yeah, love the how-to video series. It's great.
Thank you. So yeah, there's a few others on there. I was planning to share the slides if people are interested, so it's got all the links on there as well. Then there is the amazing resource hub that's being built. Let's see if I can find the right one. Nope, not that one. There we go. So if you find a good resource to share, you can submit the share. So what you found, whether it's an article or a how-to or an app that you think's great. But you can also come here and find all sorts of information about anything that you might want. So it's that kind of idea of, I think, before you build something, see if there's something out there already that might be a good starting place for where you want to go, but also for learning and for information as well as for functionality. So as you can see, some of the blogs that are quite useful for people. The how-to series again on here, and links to everything non-profit Salesforce support ideas.
And if you
Really
just
good resource.
you go up, Debbie, and do just scroll up slightly, go to advanced search. So in here, and I haven't tested this today, but click on the filter icon. See, it's a list view, basically. This is what they're using. And if you want to do, I don't know, do type of resource maybe, Debbie, rather than let's search for a word. Let's just say, okay, you can search for, say, here you go, podcasts. Gives you a list of podcasts. There's also things that are more specific. So if you're looking specifically for like a roll up or for I don't know, loads of stuff. You can actually just search and actually say, okay, show me everything that is, there you go, content area, fundraising. And I think if you make that one, yeah, there you go, blog posts on fundraising. The one thing I will just point out is there are some things that still, there are different ways to achieve the same thing. So just, do have a look through. But what I would say is that this is aimed to bring in some of the best of the best. So, save your Google, have a quick look here first, see if it's on here. So like calculating consecutive years giving using a user-defined roll-up in MPSP. And it'll give you like a little how you do that. And it will take you to the blog and so forth. And if it's the one I'm thinking of, this is pretty good. So yeah, I think there's multiple articles on this. Keep going, Debbie. Keep going, keep going. There you go. So they do more roll-ups. There's another one on there. There's consecutive years of giving. It tells you how many years they've given for. There's another one as well that does. I had a client who wanted to know every year, literally, somebody had given for. So they wanted, so that then we could do a report to say, did they give in 2022 but not in 2023? And we could just use the filters on that whole field. And that was quite a good way to do it. And there's definitely an article in there about it. So yeah, got a lot of time for Sprinty's community resources. But as they always point out, they need people submitting resources. And I'm not great at always remembering to do so. But, if you come across a resource, check it's not already on there. And if it's not, submit it. There is a team who will review them, to go through, talk about what it is, why, and yeah, they will be really pleased because they are crying out for more and more resources to really make this a hub for people to go to.
Yeah, and it's still quite new, so I still keep forgetting it's there sometimes. So the other one is if you want to get involved, if you want to share your expertise, or if you want to learn as well, then you can go and sign up for a sprint. I think mostly London or other places, but there's also virtual ones. So I've done those a couple of times. And then with the virtual, you don't have to necessarily be there all the time. Although obviously it's better if you can be. But it allows you to contribute for a few hours if that's all you've got available. So it just helps us to build a library of useful tools, knowledge to share. which is what's really great about this community is, people help each other and share knowledge. So if you haven't got one, I'd recommend you go and try one of the apps, see that will be useful for you. Have a go, see what's there. Join the group and just get connected if you're not already. And I had a quick look. Let me just close some of these windows because it's hiding behind here.
So the UK affordable housing sprint actually is not happening.
Oh, it's not, right?
No,
Cool.
it's they're trying an alternative approach at the moment, I've been told. There is, as you say, something happening at Dreamforce. Then there is Denver Sprint, which has been released. That's in Colorado, if anybody fancies a visit. And then the Agent Force nonprofit. I literally saw that yesterday and I didn't see it there, which was why I was a bit cautious about what I said until Kathy was able to say, yes, it's been posted.
Okay.
It looks like there will be a virtual 2-day sprint in January. I quite like a virtual sprint when it's Eastern time, because that means that I can join in the afternoon and then work. I can work in the mornings and then do a bit in the afternoon and the evening. There's always a break for things like dinner. They're quite happy for you to nip off and, sort out your kids, put your kids to bed, whatever you need to do. So if you fancy doing that, that often just means a bit less time at the office. And there, I would expect there to be a London sprint. It usually gets, well, they've now started to try and tie it in with World Tour.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
And,
usually
and
just before.
unofficially, we're also trying to tie one in with Toronto's the True North Dreaming in Toronto in May.
Ah, cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's quite often they are close to other events, aren't they? So that
Yeah.
if you're up for one.
And if you come along, you'll probably get to see Sprinty. I have Astro dressed in their Sprinty outfit here. But you'll get to see Sprinty, and that's the most important thing that happens. No, that's not the most important thing, but pretty fun. They're also good fun. I'm going to say great networking opportunities. You get to see great people like many people. Who's been to a sprint? Like hands up or like virtual hands up?
Virtually, only virtual.
Amazing.
So Debbie,
Amazing.
you need to come to Toronto next year.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I've got my eyes on Paul and Mark at the moment, so not that I'm giving anybody a shout out there, but sorry, and not to upset anybody else who's like, why didn't they say my name? But I'm just Paul and Mark have been around in this group for long enough that I feel like I can single them out. So yeah, that would be pretty cool. I would also really like them to come to Irish Dreaming as well, but if we just keep that quiet, okay? See if we can make that happen. Oh, Paul's like, oh, can I just say something? Sorry about Irish Streaming. Go look, non-profit tickets, bottom prices. I know that sounds like I'm actually a salesperson on some sort of American TV show, but honestly, they have got really good pricing for non-profit tickets. So what I would say is, like, if you're thinking of coming and you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to work on my boss and it's gonna take me forever to work on my boss to convince them, and I don't know, blah, 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 blah. The non-profit prices are €30, excluding fees and VAT. I don't know what that comes out at, but what I would just say is like kind of at the price there where you could just like buy your ticket and then just work on your boss after, because you'll also find there'll be people who are willing to take that ticket off you at a later date, or you could donate it back and let them reallocate it. So I would say if you're thinking about it and you're like, yeah.
But you'll need your what is it, your RCS, registered charity number?
As long as you are a registered charity, you should be absolutely fine. Just make sure
because they do ask for the number.
Yeah, it's fine. Just stick your charity number in. Yeah, any problems, give me a shout. I can also speak to them. Okay, so I am now we are nearly out of time. So I am going to say a big thank you to our presenters today. So big thank you to Yvonne, big thank you to Debbie. Can we give everybody a quick clap?
Thank you for your added value too.
not a problem. At one point, I just couldn't get myself off mute because I was too busy sorting out a duck race. So apologies for that too. Michelle's just pointed out super early bird tickets end 8th of October. Don't know how that applies to non-profit tickets, but I would just say like, yeah, grab your tickets as soon as you can. Also, you could submit to speak. So that's another thing that's an option. I'm not going to tell Paul he should submit to speak. He needs to speak here first. Like, let's all come up with a topic that Paul can talk on. So yeah. Okay.